Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Yay. All right, we got it. And we are live. We are live on Facebook. What?
Oh, we are. Oh, okay.
We are. Look at us. Here we
Did you
are.
did you tag me on the Facebook thing? Of course
I
you did.
don't know. I did. I got a
Of course you
picture
did.
right
No,
now.
don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. I'll just go to your page and
Oh.
I'm gonna have it on silent anyway. You know what I'm saying? While we
See,
get
yes,
busy.
it's going to be easier to communicate with people that way. Hey, everybody, can we even talk about that?
Can we even talk about
No.
that?
We're
Wow.
going to try. Oh, I'm so excited. So thank you guys for joining us today for our first episode. It's going to be rough. We're working things out, obviously. I think you probably just caught like 30 seconds of that. So
yeah, it's all just like you know, yourself, myself. We're works in progress. This is a
yes.
work in progress,
Yes.
it's can we even talk about that? Literally the phrase literally just came from us talking, and then Lisa said something like, yo, can we even talk about that? And I don't know what we talked about. It's probably some taboo subject. And we're like, yo, that would be a dope name for a podcast. And here we are.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like it comes up a lot. There's lots of conversations where we'll start talking and then something will happen to be like, yo, can we even? Like, do we have another hour to go there right now?
Right. I just wanted to drop some really logistic things for people who's like, this is our first podcast, the first episode of our first podcast. And the format that we're basically going to follow is all our podcasts are going to first be streamed live. You know what I'm saying? This is going to be as raw as it gets. It's going to be live on Facebook every other Wednesday. And then from there, we're going to, it's going to be available on YouTube and then also on all streaming podcast platforms. And once we all keep working out all the kinks and everything of that, we'll let you know where to link into us with that. But this is our first episode 1 of Can We Even Talk About That? And what are we talking about today, Lisa? What are we talking about?
So today we're going to be going into digital blackface, and a little bit of blackfishing, right? Mm-hmm. I feel like we could totally do a whole episode on each, but they just like they meet in weird ways. They overlap in strange ways that it seems like we should definitely be talking about both of them at least a little bit at the same time. So digital blackface and blackfishing.
Right.
Not really sure. Ooh, there it is. Not very common. So I don't know. Digital blackface. So I'm just going to give like a basic definition. So the word originated by an American journalist. His name was Adam Clayton Powell III, and he came up with the term high-tech blackface in the late 90s.
Wow.
Late 90s. So high-tech blackface. But at the time he was mostly talking about the stereotypes of Black characters in video games, the way that Black people are always portrayed as a little more violent. They're always the criminals. There's the and then it was 2017 when feminist writer Lauren Michelle Jackson kind of recoined it to be digital blackface, and she defined digital blackface as the practice of white and non-Black people making anonymous claims to a Black identity through contemporary technological mediums. So in other words, like when you're using GIFs or you're using like the little sticker thingies that are from Black celebrities or, just Black people in general. Sometimes people are using them and they don't even realize that's actually a celebrity or somebody they think it's just like a person from a GIF. It is digital blackface. That's the definition of digital blackface based on these two writers.
So like blackface itself, to further like break down the word itself, we're in 2021, and people in general, I shouldn't say people in general, because the reality is like y'all know why it's wrong, y'all still do it, and y'all are trolling us when you act like you don't know it's wrong, right? So blackface, we're still in 2021 talking about blackface being wrong, and then the person who gets caught is like, oh, I didn't know that was offensive, or it's not really offensive, and I'm just like, no, we so many times we end up on the defensive against those kind of people, but those people aren't even worth the time, because
We
the
don't have
reality is
empathy.
they know, all right,
Yes.
and they're doing it intentionally. You know what I'm saying? Um, so blackface itself, has a long history in terms of primarily coming into existence and coming into its own after the Civil War. After the Civil War, when
Right.
Jim Crow happens, because that's basically, this is when white people as a whole in the United States um, felt that they didn't have control over black people anymore. Now that they
Right.
were quote unquote free from slavery, so they utilized this entertainment method to basically hammer in stereotypes, racism, and things like that. And it was really much the rule of the land. Like this, it wasn't unusual to find blackface shit. It was the norm. You
Yes.
know what I'm saying? And this is even the stereotypes that we have to this day pretty much are rooted, in that
Yeah.
particular era. But yeah,
And
so
it's
blackface is
not
wrong.
as if blackface was just like, ooh, there's segregation and black people can't be actors or whatever. So
Mhm.
we're just gonna paint ourselves in black and play this black character. It's like they weren't just like, oh, I happen to be a black person. That's not what was happening. It was like they were stereotyping grossly. It's just like you're either the idiot, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
You're you're not smart, you're incapable. Like if you watch some of the blackface, I watch a lot of it, but if
Mhm.
you even see some clips, because like you want to understand the historical context of things.
Right,
And
right,
I
right,
think
right,
and I feel like that is what is so missing, is people don't understand that there is a historical context here
right,
that like literally traumatized people for
right,
a really long time. And so
right,
when you go back and you watch even just little clips of blackface and what was going on, it's like how fucking insulting and rude, and just like and that was part of the reason, right, that there were not black actors, because black actors would show humanity. Do you know what I mean? It's like
right,
you'd be
right,
looking at a black human playing that part, when instead we can just get this white boy to paint his face like an asshole and put on
right,
ridiculous lips and act like a fucking jackass, and that's going to
right,
reinforce this idea that black people can't do it anyway. So we're just going to
right.
let white people dumb it down for it. It's nonsense, dude.
And it's crazy.
Ridiculous.
It's crazy because like some of the original white people who did blackface, their source materials were genuine black dancers,
Mm.
black singers. So they were taking the material, they sourced the material, and then like you said, they emphasize racist elements of it. um
Right.
and the even traumatizing, even greater traumatizing thing is that, so even black entertainers at that time, there were some black entertainers at that time who ended up doing blackface,
Right.
right? Because this was now the only way by which they could do their craft, and it
Do you
just,
want a job?
right. And fast forward to the modern era, it's the same way you could have a black actor who's fucking, classically trained on Broadway, goes to
Yeah.
Hollywood, and they're like, oh, well, you can play robber number 3. You know what I'm saying? Or
Yes.
you could play the,
Stop.
rapist number 2. It's like, it doesn't matter that your freaking credentials are better in terms of acting and entertainment than
Yeah.
everybody else here, and now we hear where it transforms into, another form, now that we have this digital blackface. And the other thing about this blackface stuff is that there are so many people, entertainers, who have violated and done blackface, and who people have conveniently forgotten about and wiped their slate
Right.
clean.
Right. Right.
And it blows my mind when I remember when I remember certain people. I was like, yo, wait, didn't that person do blackface? Like, why are they I don't understand. Like, they're given a pass now. But
Right.
this
Right.
but
Right.
this brings us to where we are now with the digital manifestation of this
Right.
blackface.
Right.
And like you said, if you're on these platforms, especially if you're on a platform like IG, is where I see a lot of the blackface and blackfishing. also TikTok, and also Twitter. Those are
right,
heavy places where I
right.
see that, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I digital blackface, at least, because I'm fortunate enough not to know anybody like in human form that has painted their face and done some ridiculous shit, even though it's still happening, like across college and like university campuses. That's what's so embarrassing. It's like, and it's like when it's happening specifically on like Martin Luther King Jr. Day, or like specifically during Black History Month. It's like, ooh, because you were so unaware of what you were doing. Makes sense. But digital blackface, I feel like the biggest connection, because I understand that like white people are not dressing up as Black people and saying things and putting it on the internet, so they're going to pretend that there is some sort of disconnect between blackface and digital blackface. Noted. But the similarities are that you could find a bunch of white people in GIFs doing or saying or expressing similar sentiments, right?
Right.
B, half the time the GIFs or like the little clips that you're using, you're taking completely out of context. Like you don't, right? Like you're not, like Nene from Real Housewives. Right. I see her on white lady stuff all the time. It's like, you, first of all, I know that you do not watch Real Housewives, and I know that this little clip of Nene doing and saying what you're taking completely, because I watch Real Housewives. At least I did when I had time for TV. So I was familiar with Nene, and I liked her, and then I didn't like her, and then I liked her again, whatever. But it's the taking out of context to use for your own purposes that, I mean, is similar to blackface, right? Like that's not actually what was happening, so why are you using it? And it's reducing people who are actually like credited, not Nene specifically, but it's like there are actors, there are athletes, there are writers, there are all kinds of people that are ending up in these GIFs and these memes, and you're sharing them and you're using them not just out of context, but you also don't even know who this person is. It's just like another Black person that's doing something funny, or do you know what I mean? It's right. It's that kind of like lack of respect and acknowledgement that is very clearly similar to what blackface was and what it was used for.
Right. It's very also like not being let in on the joke, right? So like it's like you're using something, and you're not being let on joke. It's like the cakewalk, when we talked about before, the cakewalk dance that enslaved Africans did, that was literally mocking, the slave owners. And so the slave owners looked at that as like, oh, isn't that so nice? And they probably talking amongst all their friends, not realizing like, yeah, they're shitting on you.
Being clowned right now.
Right. So it's the same ways with the GIFs. It's the same thing in terms of like, they're appropriated to a degree with, like you said, without the context. And many times those that are available online are exaggerations of certain parts of Black life and Black culture, right?
Caricatures, yeah,
caricatures. And so so what happens is that many times they also use them in the same way in terms of the appropriation type of bubble, meaning that they can use them and not receive the same kind of backlash that if someone was Black using them. Like, and in one of the articles, they pointed out one of the an example is like, like a white person can share like a GIF of a Black woman rolling her eyes, right? Even in a professional setting or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Meanwhile, a Black woman rolling her eyes, you know what I'm saying, we see so much backlash in real life, or even insinuating it.
Right.
Even insinuating it, you know what I'm saying? So like it's also like this disconnect in terms of realizing, in terms of the particular intricate nature of just African American vernacular, you know what I'm saying, and English and culture, and realizing that we're not given the space to fully be ourselves in white spaces, and then you take an aspect of ourselves and place it in white space, and that's even more acceptable in white space than Black,
because it's just like reduced to like kitschy and cute. Do you know what I mean? It's not, you're not having to accept a person in their full Blackness. You get to take this little bit of them that feeds into whatever stereotype or caricature, you know what I mean? That makes Black people acceptable in small doses. Because and then that leads into appropriation and weird, right? And it's the same thing as hairstyles. It's like, yo, every white girl wants to have cornrows. Everybody thinks Afro puffs are so cute, but it's like, meanwhile, when actual Black children who are actually wearing protective styles for their hair are going to school and being told it's inappropriate, and having teachers literally cut their hair in school, having teachers send them home calling their hair in it, but you get to wear it as a style and you're so fucking fresh and you're so fucking fancy. And here's the thing, it would not bother me. We live in 2021. I personally, and I'm willing to own that this may be because I'm mixed, right? And I have had a very long life with white people and a very long life with Black people. Like, I've seen both ends of it. To me, and we're not a monolith. I don't fucking speak for everybody. I'm just trying to be honest about where I'm coming from. When I see white people wearing cornrows, with any kind of ethnic protective hairstyle, it's literally like a protective hairstyle, it's good for their hair. But they are silent when it comes to issues. Like, if you want to rock your cornrows, that's fine. But why aren't you fighting to make sure that children aren't getting in trouble for having those same hairstyles? That's not acceptable. Do you know what I mean? That to me is the line where it's like, it very clearly becomes appropriation when you stop caring how other people are treated for doing what comes naturally to them, because you're just getting by, not having any trouble taking it and going with it. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And it is the same thing. It's like, so many gifts and things that they're using are not acceptable when Black people are actually doing them in real life. It's almost, in a lot of situations, how they've been reduced to a gif or a meme in the first place, right? Is it became some kind of spectacle that they had the nerve to say or do or whatever this thing. So now you guys are just like taking it out of context and using it for whatever entertainment you're getting out of it. And it's just like, but for what?
Well, it gets back to the Black body, right? So, like, the same way that colonialism, we look at in terms of, they call it the age of exploration. I call it the age of fucking invasion and empire,
exploration.
But like, that's how it's framed in school, history books. I'm like, y'all literally went to other countries and raped and pillaged, you know what I'm saying? So
you discover shit that's been existing. You can explore, but that doesn't mean, oh Lord.
But this is what I'm getting at in terms of, like, the operating system is to go into these particular areas and to take everything, right? And the most essential resource is it fully acknowledged, which the most essential resource is the Black body, right? So it's not just the land, it's not the gyms, it's not the food, it's the Black body, it's the Black ingenuity, it's the Black intellect, it's the Black culture, so it strips it literally the same way you like strip food and make processed food. That's literally what happens. It strips it of all the essential nutrients and everything. It looks like food, it may taste like food, but like it's not nutritionally dense or anything. So this is what happens with appropriation. They strip those things and then want to use it for their context. And like you said, it's interesting because, like, this is another byproduct of white pathology, which is the hyper individuality. So like you said, like, their first reaction, if you call them on what you just mentioned, is like, I should be able to do whatever I want to, like, it's all about them, right?
Hair. I literally had a woman say to me not out loud, but on Facebook in front of everybody during a conversation, well, maybe instead of looking at it as cultural appropriation, you should look at it as cultural appreciation. And it's like, maybe you should mind your whole fucking business and not tell Black people how to perceive what is happening to Black people. But how about that? But that's how they look at it. To them, it's just like, but why?
Because there's no accountability to a community.
No. And if that's the case,
so it always
if that's the case and you should be allowed to do whatever the fuck you want, then why aren't you out there fighting for these children to be able to wear their hair however it's fine with me. It's the inconsistency that bugs me. And like I said, not a monolith. I'm not saying this to be like, hey, white people, you have my permission to do your hair however you want. It's not cultural. That's not what's happening here. What I'm saying is I will view you different, and my position on that will come down a couple notches if I see you actively in the world being like, yo, if it's okay for me, it needs to be okay for them. Right? If you're allowed to take it, then they should be allowed to continue owning it. And when only one is something that you're willing to get like all feisty over and fight, then to me it's just like, see, that's appropriation. You don't give a fuck, and that's not fair.
Like I said, it's mining the black body because it wants that resource, right? And it doesn't want other people to have access to that resource. Can you imagine if, you know, like, and this could segue a little bit into blackfishing, but can you imagine if, you know, for instance, let's say acrylic nails, right? We know that came from Black women, right? We know nail art and everything, how we envision it and how it's popping and popular in the context right now. We know that came from the Black community, and we know at certain points in our lives that women with those kind of nails were called ghetto, right?
They were called ghetto.
You know what I'm saying?
Welfare queens. They don't have to work. They can keep those nails all day because they don't do shit.
Right.
Oh, I remember.
Right. But now someone who, let's say, is blackfishing could now all of a sudden have a nail art page, right? And so the other part of appropriation is that they have to isolate it for themselves and disconnect it from the Black source because they cannot allow their livelihood to be in danger, and their livelihood literally is being in blackface. And so blackfish and blackface, like their livelihood, that's the root of it. Like that is their livelihood. So they have to disconnect, because if it was okay for Black people to be their self, to show up in full Blackness, then they wouldn't have no money. And that gets into the blackfishing in terms of especially the two type of blackfishing are, which is that I pretty much categorize the big influencer type that you see on IG and stuff.
Oh Lord.
Yeah. And then there's the type that's been happening a lot recently in terms of like there's been these white women in academia who's been not just black fishing, but brown fishing, for lack of a better term, indigenous fishing. They've been, and it's problematic because they literally are taking up resources and space that is supposed to be for a Black person, that there's already not space there for them. Like there's already not space there for it. And the little bit of space that's there, they're like, I should have access to it. Like the amount of audacity to think that you should take up space for Black
capacity.
Yo, that's it, yo. Like that's like, you can't pass that level. If that's not racist, I don't know what is. Like that's like ultimate level, you know. The influencer ones are problematic too, because like the aesthetic, you know, it becomes an aesthetic, right? And then they push it, but at the same time they're appropriating all these forms of fashion and literally up there saying that they're Black when they're not. And at the same time they have heavy tones of anti-Blackness. It's too much.
Yeah, like by taking resources that are meant for Black people in the first place. I mean, there's that. That's pretty anti-Black.
Right.
To full on, if you care so much, I mean, obviously you need to speak up and step up, but your job is to amplify Black voices, not pretend you're a Black voice and speak for Black people. That shit does not even make any sense. And just that they know that pretending to be Black will get them a certain notoriety and will get them a certain level of attention and will get them a certain level of resources. It proves that it's like, we are here and we can do lots of things. You're not allowing the space for it. And when space is created for it, there's Black fishing, there's the brown fishing, there's the indigenous, there's that kind of shit. And it's like, if you can't acknowledge how much of it, did you see? So my friend Crystal shared this a couple days ago. I laughed so hard I literally cried, and I did not pay enough attention to see if it's like recent or if it's older, but it's a picture of this white blonde lady with long blonde hair. She's got a do-rag on, and it says new silky hair rags. And I was like, what the fuck is this silky hair rag? Why on earth are you wearing this? Is another thing that it's like, this is not style, this is not fashion, it's literally a protective hair. Do-rags are like a thing for a reason, you guys. They're not silky hair rag. I'm like, that is appropriation.
Well,
you're appropriating right now.
I saw a white woman sell. I don't know if it was on. I don't know what platform she was selling them on, but she
Right.
literally came out like she came up with, oh, that's a way to protect your hair. Like she came up with these hair bonnets.
She
I'm
made it
like,
up. Oh,
I'm like,
nice.
I was like, hair bonnets. I
Except
was
for
like,
we've been wearing
you know what I'm saying? I was like,
these.
but she really was trying to postulate as though she was the innovator of this thing, and
In
I'm
what?
just like, my mind was blown. You know what I'm
Yeah, and
saying?
that
Like,
people allow it, that people pretend that it's like this brand new thing. They have no. It's like, what are you? What? I don't know.
well, like I said, like pretty much, because this is the conversation that America doesn't want to have, which is, if it wasn't for Black people, if it wasn't for Indigenous people, if it wasn't for people of color, you know, what would we be defining as American? You know what I'm saying? Even though
Yeah.
when you go abroad, many times American is seen as like automatic default white. The reality is, if you want to reference those things
Culturally, yeah.
culturally, it's just like,
When
what
we talk about
aspect of America
music or food or
are
fashion, that's a valid point. So, like, what? That's a weird thing that I've never thought about.
every single last thing, all popular music, all youth culture, you
Right.
know what I'm saying? Its origin is Black. I mean, there's no way
That is
around
a
it.
trip.
You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Food culture, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
as much as they want to try to push,
Ooh.
you know, different European, food things and things, the reality is that, you know, most of our food culinary stuff is from Black and Indigenous people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's
Also,
not like a European cuisine or whatever. It's not like what you would consider white. That's a trip. I
no,
never
no,
thought about that.
you're only on TV. Like, let's be
Right.
real. Only on TV is French food held as like a high cuisine, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're going out with your
Yeah.
people, you're not going out to a French restaurant. If I'm trying to go out on a
We
romantic
even
date,
have one out here too.
you do.
Hmm.
Oh, see, I didn't even know
We
that.
did.
I don't even
Yeah.
see. I don't know how they have business because I don't know anybody that eat French food. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like
The whole
romantic,
point.
right? Even romantic dinners, like the closest quote unquote white that you would get to romantic dinners is Italian food, right? So
Same. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so even the cuisine, like it's not there. So like this is the conversation that America doesn't want to have, which
Right.
is,
Right. Right.
the resources that build even what we properly know as American culture is
Right.
from the Black and the brown bodies. And we're not and we're
Right.
not, we're
Right.
not
Right.
just we're talking not physical, but also intellectual work. You know what
Right.
I'm saying?
Right.
And so
Well, and
that
that's part of the way that the gifts are feeding into the stereotypes, right? Because it's like when I stop to think about it, and I mean, I read a lot, I watched some YouTube videos, I like investigate, I'm trying to, gather information. So I'm not just speaking from a place of I'm annoyed with people who do this. Um, but you see that a lot. It's like when you think about the actual, like the stereotypes that originated, that came in like full force with blackface, right?
mhm.
um there was really, it's like, what dark skinned women were there that weren't like the mammy kind of
Mhm.
stereotype? If you were very, very dark, you're just like the big dark, mammy who's either like super nurturing and just like, ooh, loves everybody, and like an Uncle Tom kind of,
Right.
you know what I mean, has no judgment and just wants everybody to be comfortable and love. It's mammy. Or she's like this hardcore disciplinarian that'll bust your ass,
Yep.
right? Light skinned women, as far as blackface, any kind of light skinned or mixed mulatto woman
Mhm.
was always like really slutty, lecherous. You know
Oh
what
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah.
like out for whatever she could get, and it's always got to be a white man, and she's gonna money, and you know what I
Right,
mean? And you see the same thing. When do you ever see Mariah Carey gift being used when it's not a shady kind of like
right,
kind, right?
right,
Always,
right. No, and
always.
and it's projection too. So like,
Yes,
like
yes,
the tragic the stereotype or trope of the tragic mulatta, what I'm saying, is well known in literature. But it's funny because it's projection, in terms of just like, like you said, like she's postulated as being, overly sexed and things of this
always.
nature, but it's just like, but we don't talk about fucking the rape of slavery. Like we don't talk about white men raping
What
women.
about the
consistently
these ladies come from? How did that
like
happen?
consistently. Like we
Black
don't
people
talk
are just
about
having
that.
so many kids they ran out of melanin. It must be because
I'm done.
obviously
Yeah.
white men were just like raping black women and creating yes, and then turning their own offspring into slutty heathens because obviously
Right.
you know.
And then so we don't have that conversation. What other conversation don't we have? We don't have the
Yeah.
conversation that oh, white men also raped black men during slavery.
Also,
And then also white women raped black men during slavery. Like we don't have those conversations because we can't even have the first one because
right.
all stereotypes are kind of focused on you deserve this. This is why
Yes,
you deserve this. This
these people are this
stereotype.
way. Yes,
Right. They're this way genetically, by birth. So they're lazy by birth, they're dumb by birth, they're oversexed, by birth,
yes,
So whatever happens to you happens because it was supposed to happen, and therefore it removes all the onus, you
yes.
know, from
There's
them.
no
And
accountability for white
right.
people.
And that's what this blackface does. That's what digital blackface does. That's what blackfishing does. It removes accountability because it's, at the end of the day, like I said, they'll just be like, well, I didn't know. It's like, no, you very, very much well knew because you used it in the proper context to get what you wanted. You know what I'm saying? Like you
It's
like
that part.
right.
It's like, oh, but you knew.
like white tears, like
Whew.
when white women who call police on black people, and then they get called out, and then the police come, and then all of a sudden they go from like raging people to like the tears. It's like
Yes,
you they know that it works and they weaponize it, and it's not something that literally they are to a degree even have to be taught because it's so pervasive. It's like this is how you
it's
interact.
that. It is, yes. In the moment, they're being completely, I mean, not every time, I'm not trying to, whatever. But it's like, there is a sincerity to it. They literally have been raised and embedded in a culture that's just like, you are always right. And if somebody, especially a black man, tries to tell you you're not, whoo, then it's, do you know what I mean? They feel offended. They feel that actual fear because it's literally been like instilled in them. They really feel like they're coming from an authentic and genuine place, just like this. They do it on Facebook too. I deal with it on Facebook all the time because I'll call white ladies out all the fucking time, and then they'll get offended. Well, I'm just not going to come here and comment anymore. Well, if this is the way the conversation is going to be, it's like, boo fucking who? Okay. Don't come here then, because over here nobody has time for your shit.
Right, and even that itself is an expression of fucking privilege. Meaning, like,
it is. You get to leave. She's had enough. She's done.
Right.
Okay.
Right. You have the option. Meanwhile, if you cried, if you accused me of doing something in public, and you and then I wasn't doing it, then the police came and you cried and I got arrested, like I can't walk away from that. You know what I'm saying? Emmett Till couldn't walk away from what they did.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Like all these particular frames.
And it's almost like even if he could have, there's not the support for that. Like even if it weren't such a violent situation, do you know what I mean? It's like there is not the support for that because it backs up. There's always just this idea that that's how black people are and that's how you have to deal with them. It's like when I did this presentation with So Black last week. And we were talking about politics, and there was this statistic, and I don't have the numbers exactly, but it was something like 42% of Democrats believe that if black people worked hard enough, they would be more successful. This is the Democratic part. And like I said, the number may not be exact. It was not quite 50%, but it was enough of a that I was like, you really in 2020? Because this article is from 2020, July of 2020. Like, you really in fucking 2020 think that the problem is that black people don't try hard enough? I don't know anybody who works as hard as me. How long did you know me waking up 3 o'clock in the morning for 4 years fucking straight to work with my kids, then stay home and homeschool my kids all day, then go to sleep, to wake up, to do it again at 2 o'clock. It's 7 days a fucking week for 4 years through 2 pregnancies. I work my ass off. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and I'm not the only one like that. It's not an issue of who's working hard enough.
Right. No, it never was, but that becomes the narrative, right? Because then, if you can control the narrative, then you can really control the outcome. So literally, many black people have internalized that they aren't where they're supposed to be because they don't work hard enough. Meanwhile,
Yes.
they're literally working themselves to death. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Like
Yeah.
so like
Yeah.
like you tell me, like, if for instance, let's segue a little bit into minimum wage, right? So-called minimum
Yo.
wage. I still wish that term would just die, because when it was
Kill it.
originally conceived, it was framed as a living wage. It's never been, you know, never was supposed to be a minimum wage. It was always supposed to be a living wage, right? But if you have someone who's literally working 40 plus hours a week, and can't, keep a roof over their head, food in their belly, then that's has nothing to do with how hard a person is working. Has nothing to
Doesn't
do.
even make any sense. It
No,
does
it
not.
doesn't. It doesn't make sense for 8 of the Democrats to vote against a living wage. Yeah, 8 of them. 8 of them voted against it. Democrats.
They were white.
And they were white, and they were all millionaires.
Okay. Okay. Also that. I know it. I knew it. I was like,
So
I
like
already know.
so like the narrative is the controlling of the narrative. That's why it's important in terms of when we have these discussions about blackface or digital blackface or blackfishing. Like, I don't debate. I'm not
Yeah,
debating.
it's not a debate. No, it's
Like,
me telling
I'm not.
you either taking it or not.
Can you imagine? And I hate to always frame it like this, but it's easier. It's easier for some people to digest this way. But
Yeah.
can you imagine me trying to tell a woman, what she needs to do, or what the best thing to do is, I don't know, for her period, or while she's dealing with, um, being
Pregnancy or
pregnant, or
nursing or
things like
yeah,
that. You know what I'm saying? Like it would be ridiculous, right? It's the
nonsense.
same ridiculous nonsense when Black people are telling you this is happening, for you to be like, well, I know. Well, I have this one friend, or, well, yeah, this is like, yo, like, just the caucasity, you know what I'm saying? That's that you actually think that I give a fuck what you said. Like,
I don't.
I don't. You know what I'm saying? And
That
that's the
didn't
first,
happen.
that's the first bit of power that we need to take back, in terms of
Oh,
start
it's
getting
true.
platforms. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Or like, you're here to learn. That's period. You're not here
Yeah.
you have nothing to contribute in terms of this topic, this framework. You
Yes.
know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So it's important for us to come with that kind of energy. You know what I'm saying? Because it will save us
Always
a lot of a
agreed.
lot of heartache. You know what I'm saying?
No,
It'll
it's
save the
true.
heartache.
We're not
It's
here to
like,
discuss it with you. That's not. We're just letting you know.
right.
And that's
And
the problem. I feel like people think that if you are asking them to be respectful of digital blackface, they feel like you're just calling them racist. And it's like
right,
your inability to see more than one possibility at a time is nobody's fucking fault but your own.
right,
Your options in life are not to be using black gifts and a racist, or not using black gifts and the most anti-racist best ally there is in the history of those. Those are not our only two options. There's
right.
lots of fucking in-betweens and stuff. And nobody's saying that every time you use digital blackface or like a gif or whatever, that you're being racist or you're a racist. What we are saying though is like it is reinforcing certain negative racist stereotypes, and there is absolutely a population of black people that don't like seeing it and are offended by it and don't feel good about it. And it is not
Yeah.
unreasonable the same
Right.
way that we ask people to wear masks. Like, bro, can you just be considerate of other people in the world? Because if you are sick and you pass that to them, it could be a problem. So just wear your mask. We're in a pandemic. It's that same kind of thing. Nobody's saying that you are the pandemic and you're out in the world getting everybody sick. It's just saying like, hey, if you refrain from doing this one thing, it will help a bunch of people feel better while not hurting a single soul.
Right,
So
right.
you could just know.
And also, by asking that person by a person refusing to see those other options and refusing to listen to Black people, that's racist.
That's the part where it becomes racist. That's
That's
when
the
you
part where it
start
becomes
exactly.
racist. You know what I'm
That's the part.
saying?
It's like you were
Because,
racist until you're like, man, fuck what black people think. And I was like, oh, see, that's the problem.
right, and that's basically, you just put it right there. That's exactly what I hear when I start hearing them talking about all these excuses and stuff. You're like,
Yeah.
fuck Black people, I'm gonna do what the fuck I want. I was like, and that's the history of fucking colonialism and racism.
That's
You
why
know?
we're here. All right. Thanks for bringing
so
it full circle, buddy.
yeah, so like it's important, like I said, for us to frame, control narratives, which is why part of the reason why we do this podcast, so we let people know, like, this is the narrative, this is how we're framing it, and no, you can't go to a fucking all anti-racist panel and there only be cis hetero white men up there. Like, shit's
That doesn't
not.
make any sense.
No, make it make sense, please. Make it make
Right.
sense. I just saw.
Can
I just think. Did you see that post or that ad or event for Oberlin College?
I tell you that I am working with a local
Oh,
nonprofit
that's
right
right.
now?
We did have this discussion,
Yes,
right?
dude. And shout out to Ethan and Tiziana because they, like a week before that Oberlin thing like blew up, they
Mm.
had reached out to me to be like, yo, we're part of the classical music world and we really want to do some things, but we're trying to avoid tokenism and all this weird shit that is happening in the classical world. Like, we're not with it. So I've been working with them and they sent that to me when it came out. They right away were like, this is why we reached out to you, Lisa, because this is what's happening. Like, it is so, I could not.
So
I died.
for those who are not familiar with it,
Right.
Oberlin College, they're having a presentation for Black History Month, and all of the speakers, all like it's like 6 speakers, all white, right? All white, right? Can you imagine, you having a presentation for Women's History Month, right? And all the speakers are male. Or can you imagine you're having a presentation to talk about the history of Judaism or whatever, and no one's Jewish up there?
Everybody's Hindu.
Right. Like, see, this when things are done like that, like I can't believe you all like they don't know. So I'm like, you just trolling me.
The idea that there's like no Black people that understand classical music that could give these talks, and if that's the case, don't you think you should investigate why that is? I mean, and for the record, Anima Mundi Productions is part of the reason that we're working together is because they want to be able to engage more Black people in classical music. Because it's like composers, musicians, they're out there, of course, but it's like you have a responsibility to amplify those voices.
Exactly.
And that's the thing, is it's like Oberlin College wants to recognize Black people in classical music. That's dope. So amplify their voices instead of just giving more white people a microphone to talk about shit that they have not lived and they have not experienced and they don't understand. That doesn't make any sense.
And and the other thing is like, don't even be the token to bring them only in on Black History Month, right?
Word.
Like white people are not the say all end all of classical music. Never have been. Even the simple fact that we refer to white European music during this particular period as classical music is racist.
200 years. Yeah.
Right. Like there's not classical music in West Africa. There's not classical music in India or in Asia. Like, even that in itself is a racist framing. But like, even history, you need to bring in these other people because they need to teach y'all. You know what I'm saying? Meaning, for instance, like the Moors occupied Europe, you know what I'm saying, for hundreds and hundreds of years. Their freaking instruments and notations of music and stuff, this is part of the foundation and structure of classical music,
Right.
but that's never ever talked about, right?
Just like Beethoven.
Right. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, even that needs to be put in the framework. And then historically, throughout history, of course, there have been Black people involved with classical music, but they don't even know who that is because of their own framing of classical music. You know what I'm saying? Right. So like I said, like, bring in these people, pay people, pass the mic, and it freaking empowers your own organization. Like, you're not just doing this for Black people, trust. You're doing it also
because
you need it. You know what I'm saying? You need it. How dare you out there teaching European classical music and not know any Black people?
Why? For what?
Right.
You're obviously not a fan of classical music. You're
right.
Fan of white people who played classical music. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because right now there's a whole bunch of Black people in Black classical music all across the United States. You couldn't think of one. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Or historically, literally every in terms of like acting, for example, literally every Black male that I know that is a popular actor right now was on Broadway. He's done Shakespeare.
Right.
He's done Othello.
Right.
Every Black actor, every Black male actor has done Othello.
Right.
So it's just like, the ignorance in terms of controlling the narrative also, like I said, it becomes a detriment, not just to Black people, but because a detriment to white people, because they really have a false understanding of their own history. So that's why
Yeah,
it's
they're not.
important.
Black History Black History Month was not for Black people. I don't know why people think that. Black History Month is for y'all.
Right.
Because
You
of
know what
this
I'm
kind of
saying?
shit specifically, it's like we already know what you've been doing. Y'all have been lying about. We already know. We needed a month
Right.
dedicated to Black history, so there was like an opportunity for people to hear what was actually going on because we didn't know it. Everybody already knows. It's not like a
Right.
thing for us. We've understood what we've been through. It's you guys that have not had it in context, and it's the same thing. It's just God, that's how it goes. This is what happens every time we get to. That's why it's like, can't we even talk about that? Because it's two things. Right now that we're in the middle of trying to talk about it, it's like, can we even talk about that in the sense that it's like, is that allowed to be brought up? Like, can we even talk about that? But it's also like, can we even talk about that without like it spiraling into 900 other things that need to be talked about? It's like it never stays on course because there's so many shit. It's like
of course,
everything.
of course. This is why we ended up here, because you're right. Everything is connected, and once again, contrasting, the global majority versus white systems of operation and stuff. They have hyper individuality, disconnect from everything. So it's understandable that's how they run their narrative, right?
Right.
They literally run their narrative in terms of just like, things appear like fully grown, out of the womb, like a whole adult popped out of the womb, and that didn't happen. Like they don't know the history of Europe. They don't know the history of the United States. You know what I'm saying? The average Black person, and this is what I mention a lot to people. The average Black person knows more history than the average white person because we're forced to learn white history, and then we learn our own history on our own.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So we come, a little more to the table, whereas they only learn their whitewashed version of history, which is wrong. You know what I'm saying?
Satisfying for them. Yeah.
Right. Well, it's part of their operating system. They need that in order to govern. They need that in order to operate in a society where there's a global majority, meaning people, melanated people. Because they're the minority.
Part of their It's part of their power and control, though, to kind of like reinforce this historical idea that it's their birthright, that like white people have always done this and white people have always been in charge here and made these decisions. It's like, except for not.
Right. Except that's not how it happened, But Anchor. So the spiral into like conclusion, in terms of digital blackface, in terms of blackfishing. One, don't do that shit.
For starters, please do not.
Don't do it. You know what I'm saying? If you really having a problem in terms of understanding, in terms of why not? First of all, we should have covered that in the episode. But if not, they have this thing called search engines. You can look at
that. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
The extent of our emotional labor today, friends.
You know what I'm saying? Like
I never understand why it's not enough just to accept it offends people. So don't. Nobody's asking you to like suppress a part of yourself. It's not like, yo, man, when you wear that perfume, it offends me. Please don't. Or when you wear that shirt, it offends me, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's just like portion of the population feels like it's inappropriate and the historical context of it makes it painful for them. Just acknowledge that and be cool
and move on. Like it's not so hard. So for instance, I know and understand logically and historically that the swastika predates the usage by Germany and by the Nazis, right? I understand that it has appeared all over the planet in ancient ancient India and in the Far East, even in indigenous cultures here, right? We understand the historical, origin of it. Yet we also know that it has a new connotation as filtered through the Nazi regime, and so we don't go around rocking.
Allowed it to be appropriated. It was appropriated and misused, taken completely out of context, and now it's ruined.
Right. So I don't have arguments or discussions in terms of why I should still be able to rock it. You know what I'm saying?
Nobody ever, that's not true. I have seen some weird ass fucking white people online trying to be like the original swastika, as if that erases the history of Jewish people and like what happened. It's terrible. But yeah, for the majority, like most people are well aware that it's just like, we don't do that. We just don't do that.
Right. And so it's really not, you know, it doesn't warrant, you know, a big debate or discussion in terms of when I say don't do blackface. You know what I'm saying? At a certain point, I'm gonna just say you're racist because you're holding on to it. Like it's the same way, like you just said, that there's certain white people who argue online about being able to use the swastika. It's like, okay, but why are you arguing so hard for this one thing? Like there's not hundreds of other different rooms that you could rock. You know what I'm saying? There's not 100 other things you can rock. But why are you holding on to this? You holding on part of that because you want to do that whole domination.
There's a power element.
Right. You know, so when people start to push back against blackface, digital blackface, and blackfishing, you know, that just tells me where your heart really is at. You know, and at that point, I'm like, yo, fuck you.
Because it's not hard just to be like, yo, I never thought of that, never put it together. I mean, now that it's in that context, I see things differently. Totally cool. Right. It's real, you know, it's not hard.
No, it's not at all. Not at all.
Unless you weren't raised right. Just kidding.
You know, a lot of people. That's a whole nother episode in terms of people not being able to think nowadays and not being able to research properly. You know, you used to get just be like, well, research it on your own. You know, people don't know how to research. This is why we have QAnon out there, yo. You know, people don't know how to research everything. It becomes fact or becomes relevant or strong to them. I'm just like, yeah, no, dude, you know, from, you know, in the backwoods, you know, yelling on a YouTube video is not the same thing as vetted research. It's just not. And it's not about being, you know, white research versus black research or whatever. It's like, no, black people, you know, we already historically have set down the rules and regulations to validate research. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, right.
You know what I'm saying? We were already we were already scientists and all this kind of stuff. So it's just like, yeah, we know this, you know what I'm saying? So it's not white versus black. It's like, yo, that's some bullshit. You know?
Yeah, some bullshit. Exactly. That's a part of the problem is too, is it's just like, you know, there's people don't seem to know the difference between like styles of writing. It's like an opinion piece where we share our opinions. And we can really, really like those, but we also can't cite those for research papers. Unless we're making clear that this was an opinion that somebody shared. A scientific article is different than an opinion piece. And people seem to love opinion pieces and really want to focus on what this person. And then when a scientific research comes out, it's like, oh, it's skewed. It's skewed by what? Fact? By the way things are? Like, you can feel however you want about that, but that also doesn't change that it's fact. That's how it goes. You know what I mean?
No, it's exactly how it goes. You know what I'm saying?
I thought of like 7 topics for future episodes, by the way, while we were sitting here talking.
Of course. That's what happens.
Episode on this, episode on this, episode on this.
It is what's gonna happen. But
so good.
Yeah. Let's close it out though, because you know we live forever and ever and ever. But
so true.
Good stuff. Yo, thank y'all for coming through for this inaugural episode. You know, so we got one into the belt.
Yay, we did an episode. We're so proud of us. 10 years in the making. Literally.
Did you just drop your earpod? You did. You dropped your earpod because you went all silent and everything. You know, we're gonna keep that in there. We keep some blooper reels in there, yo. We're gonna keep blooper reels in there.
It's always me. I know, dude. It's always me. And I can't find them back to my earring now either. All right, y'all.
Okay.
Thank you for being with us.
Word.
All right, 2 weeks. We'll be back.
2 weeks. All right.
Bye, guys.